Now, by the way, here's what I want to ask you. Why is this in our Bibles? Why did Jesus tell us this? Why is He sharing this? He wants His hearers and His listeners and us to understand, to gain from His insight what the true nature of God really is. You know why? Because if you don't understand, if you think God is some angry, bitter, hateful judge watching every bad thing you've ever done, and I'll tell you what, I'm just trying to get a chance before I can, jerk the slack out of him. If you think that's how God is, you're going to, like that student I told you, but you're going to try to avoid God. People that think that way try to stay out of God's way. And by the way, can I tell you, that is the main reason people don't go to church, because they're afraid they might run into God there. Right? And as it is, well, no, I'm not going to say that. I was about to say that many times they needn't worry about it. I'm not going to say that. Anyway. But see, that's what people think. I don't want to go hang around with those Christians. I don't want to go to church because I might run into God. And if I run into God, He's going to be mad at me. Well, see, because He sees every bad thing I've ever done. Well, that's true. He does see every bad thing. In fact, God is omniscient. He saw every bad thing you'd ever do before you were ever born. And that's why He sent Jesus to the cross, to bear our sins in His own body on the tree, so that He can have a relationship with you, not distorted by sin. And so Jesus is here telling us, listen, let me tell you what God's really like. If you come to Him for bread, He's not going to give you a stone. If you're looking for a fish, He's not going to give you a serpent. Even natural fathers are that good, and God is so much more better. He's so much better than that, better than you can conceive of. And then notice that in the same context, He says, ask and it shall be given you. You see, if you think, people that think God is mad don't bother to ask because they don't think there's any point. They're afraid to come to God. They're afraid to ask. Don't even bother dealing with it. They think, here's what they think, everything that happens is God. And so when something bad happens, God must be mad at me. Listen, I'm going to talk about this in a minute. Many things are at work other than God. But good things, I think it's safe to attribute all good things to God. Elliot, verse 11 here. Would you give me that in the Message translation? I like how the Message says this. As bad as you are, you wouldn't think of such a thing. You're at least decent with your own children. So don't you think the God who conceived you in love will be even better? Don't you think the God who conceived us and gave us our new birth and saved us in love, don't you think He's even better than we are as parents? See, as parents, we try to be as good as we can with our children, don't we? All right, we do. And we're just ordinary people. Don't you think God is that much better? That's what He's saying. He is saying all this with the intent to encourage us, or to try to give us confidence and faith, if I may even say that, faith and hope and confidence to come to Him with at least the hope that He'll hear us and hear our prayers. And if you meditate on this long enough, it will actually stir up a true faith and confidence that when I go to God, He hears what I pray and He grants me the request that I ask for. And that's where the real connection is made, when we reach out in faith to God. God deals with us by His grace, and our faith is the appropriate response to His grace. Now, having said all of that, the question comes up in many people's minds, and it's a logical question. If what you say is true, and that only good things come from God, and that He's not giving anybody a stone, and He's not giving anybody a serpent, and He's giving us only good things, then why in the world are all these bad things coming our way in life? Well, I'd like to offer to you three distinct possibilities of why bad things happen, why bad things come across our paths. And the first one you're not going to like, but I'll use myself as the example rather than you. One reason bad things happen is because we are as the result of bad decisions that we ourselves have made. Now, again, I tell you that I have talked to so many people, counseled with so many people who don't even come to church here. They'll call me on the phone, they'll talk, and you know what, I'm happy to help anybody at any time. And over the years, it has begun to dawn on me, and some people, like every 6 months or so, I'll have a phone conversation and talk about the new tragedy in their life, or the new disaster, and they want me to solve on the telephone whatever this thing is, this tragedy and this disaster. And it's finally has dawned on me over a process of many years, a lot of things that people come to me and want me to pray them out of are really the result of really dumb decisions that they've made. Bad choices. Now listen, is it possible that we can make a bad choice and a bad decision? Well, let me tell you a little story as an illustration. This is just an illustration of this. We went to Oklahoma City one time to pick up my mother-in-law. That would be April's mother when she was still alive. And she was coming back to the airport, and I'm sorry, I don't remember all the circumstance. My wife never forgets anything. I'm sure she would know. April knows why we picked her up. I can't remember right now. But I remember this. We picked her up, and it had been raining for 2 or 3 days solid. And it was misty and rainy. You know how it's like sometimes it was kind of misty, and we're driving back. It's dark. It's at night, and she lived in Amarita at that time. If you know where Amarita is, it's over here. Well, you guys know where Amarita is. It's kind of in between here and Kiowa. But she was... we had to take her home to Amarita, and we were coming back from Oklahoma City, and we got to Enid. And as we're coming out of Enid, south out of Enid, the thought crossed my mind, wait a minute, if I go all the way on this highway and go back, it's going to take me to Alva, then I'm going to have to double back and go back to Amarita. I know, I'm really smart here. I am really bright. I'm going to cut across and take I know there's a paved highway that goes across here, and I'm going to cut across and go through Cherokee and take a shortcut to Amarita. And I'm thinking I'm really smart. But it was misty, and it was kind of dark. Well, it was dark. It was night, and it was rainy and dark, and it had been raining for 2 or 3 days. And I turned on a road that I thought was the right road. But as I found out after half a mile, the pavement ended, and now it was a kind of a sandy road. And I thought to myself, I've made a mistake here. But I didn't want my mother-in-law to think that her daughter married some kind of a fool. So I just acted like I knew what I was doing. Don't worry, just keep on going. Well, after a while, the sand turned into kind of a red dirt, and after a while, that turned into another kind of dirt, and it turned into just a mushy mud. And after a while, it got to where this was like 2 miles on this dirt road that was now just solid mud, and we were slowing down. And I wasn't meaning to slow down, but the car was getting slower and slower. Listen, I made a mistake. I made a wrong turn, and I'll admit it, because of my own pride, and I didn't want to appear stupid, I should have stopped. I made a bad decision. And now finally, half out in the middle of the country, and my wife's in the car. Elliot, that's all we had then. Elliot's a little baby, and he's in the back seat in his car seat. And every time I look in the rearview mirror, I'd see his eyes looking at me. Like, do you know what you're doing? I know, you don't remember this, do you, Elliot? Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad you don't remember it. So after a while, I didn't have any choice. Car stopped. I couldn't go anymore. We were stuck in the mud. And then I didn't have any choice. I had to say, well, I made a wrong turn. I didn't want to. I didn't want to seem stupid. Nobody said anything. I know they're probably thinking some things, but nobody said a word. At that point, I made it, well, I'll just finish the story. What I had to do was I had to get out of the car and get out in the mud, and it was really, really mud. Well, think about how muddy it would have to be. The car wouldn't even go anymore. And I had to get April behind the wheel, and she put it in reverse and gun it. And I pushed with my back, and it just moved a little inch. It took an hour or more to just get it out of that, and then I had to back up through my tracks. It was really embarrassing. But can I blame God for that? Can I say, I don't know why God got me stuck in the mud? Why God in his mysterious ways, He must have had a plan to work. So He's teaching me something. Well, I was learning something, but I can't blame God. God didn't have anything to do with it, did He? Right? It was me. I made a bad decision. In fact, if I had been listening, as Cami was saying, if I had been listening to God and not letting my pride get in the way, if I had been listening to God, I probably would have heard Him say, you made a wrong turn. Why don't you stop right now and back out and get back on the highway? It would have been better just to go through Alva and stay on the pavement than what you're doing right now. If I would have been listening to God, He would have got me out. He would have saved me that trouble. But I made a bad decision. So many things in life, and I hate to have to say this, we can't. It's possible for us to make bad decisions. But what to do when you make a bad decision is admit I made a bad decision and back up and go the other way. That's what the Bible calls repentance. That's really what it means. It means to change your mind, back up, and turn around. Now, this is really hard. It's embarrassing, and you can't, don't ever think you're going to convince somebody else to do this. I've never been able to convince anybody else to. God has to convince you. But I'll just use myself, and I can't see what I'm saying is I couldn't blame God for that. That incident, that circumstance was solely the result of a bad decision I made.